Welcome back to Rose Comics. I'm Nick, and today we're going to be talking about my comic collecting journey. It has changed just so much in the last year and a half, really. I mean, even at the beginning of COVID, so about 2 years ago, it's just changed so much. What I'm doing with my collecting and comic books as a whole, and then this whole new introduction of manga into the hobby, and really just talk about that a little bit because I think it's so interesting, and I think it's important that people know that you can change the way you collect comics or the hobby as a whole. When I first started comic book collecting, I did like most people did, and I got caught up in FOMO and all these other things that seemed really fun at the time, and then it became so stressful running to the comic shop on new comic book day at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock to try to be the first guy in the door to make sure I didn't miss my books, or what was the hot book, or, you know, can I do this, or, you know, and then I'd be on auctions and I would spend outrageous, truly outrageous amounts of money on auctions, on these online auctions, dollar bin auctions and random pulls. And I mean, literally I would have just massive boxes of comics show up. And then I ended up with all of these comic books that I never read, or, you know, I was excited about because I thought I bought the entire run of Infinity Warlock and plus some. And then I was having some FOMO, like, ooh, what if he's introduced into the MCU? These are going to be worth so much. No, they weren't, and they're not going to be even now and today. So that's kind of how I started off collecting. And then I got into, you know, really picking up new comic book day books and really just reading those. You know, I'd go in and I would have a massive pull list. I would have everything on the pull list just in case it was a good series, or, you know, what if I didn't pick it up and then it turned into a hot book and then I had to go pay $10, $15, $20 for it just to read it. Because at the time, digital comics weren't something that I was really thought was viable or interesting to me. And so I loved new comic book day. I'd go in, I'd spend outrageous amounts of money on new comic book day books just for them to sit in the long boxes or to sit stacked up in a read pile, and then I would never really get to them. And I know there's so many folks out there like you, like me, that do that. You don't read them. And that's fine, because life gets in the way, things get busy, they just pile up, and then once you're 5, 6, 7 issues behind, now all of a sudden you have to sit and really dive deep just to be able to enjoy the new issue that came out. So I changed all of that. I decided, you know what, I'm not gonna go in and pick up every single book. So what I started to do was focus down my pull list on just a few books that I knew I was gonna read, that I was already actively reading, that really excited me. And then I was going to take that extra money and put it towards the bigger books, the bigger keys that I wanted to go buy, the ones that were going to mean more to me, that still ended up just going and sitting in a pull box. Or, you know, I really liked them, but once I had it, I kind of was like, okay, I have it, now what? And I know there are some people that have that kind of feeling too. And then it sits in your pull box. It's like, do I really need that book? Yeah, it was great. And not necessarily do I need it, but does it still bring me joy? And I changed that too. So I stopped just focusing on buying random keys that really didn't mean anything to me. And then right as I started to do that, and I decided I'm going to start focusing on the real big boys, right? The ones that are real keys that mean something to me because I love the character or love the cover. Not just the $50 book because it's a FMV of $75 book, but I can get it for $50, so I'm gonna buy it just so I can put it in my short box. Yeah, I stopped doing that. And as soon as that happened, COVID comes along and inflation happens in these comic book prices. Comic books that were going for 15, 20 bucks were now going for $150, $200 for no reason. I mean, just crazy amounts of money. And it made no sense, but the government was giving out free money. People were kind of sitting at home shopping. This whole new world of folks coming in to invest in comic books, just like what happened with kind of the trading cards. And I know there's a lot more to it than that. I'm just kind of being brief. So you can leave me a comment if you want, talking about how wrong I am, and there's 1,000 other reasons, and that's fine. But high level, free government money, people sitting at home. Now all of a sudden people want to invest in collectibles, and it just blew up. So I decided, you know what? Screw this. I'm not even going to go focus on big books until prices come back down some. And they have started to kind of trend down, or at least they're not skyrocketing. And what I did is I said, I'm going to focus on reading comic books. I'm going to go in and finally start reading some of these stories and some of these these things that I bought the books for, but I don't even know why, because I've not even read the story. I just thought the cover was cool, or heard, hey, this was a really great story in comics, I'll buy the book. And then I started diving so deep into comics, right? And truly reading and having like some of the best times in comic book collecting by just reading the books, which I loved. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love going out hunting. One of my favorite things to do to this day is to go with Dustin and go to a local comic shop, or to a comic shop we've never been to, or even a flea market, and go and dig through books and flipping through books. And there's still something so exciting about that. But it's all about, you know, me having that control of not buying books that I really just don't care about just for the sake of, oh, I found it, let me buy it, and then stick it in a short box. So I started reading so much. I bet you I've read in the past 2 years well over 2,000 comic issues, and that's not even including the manga issues. I've read series that I just never really thought I'd be interested in, and I've loved, like Invincible. Quite frankly, never thought I'd actually care for it, and I love that story. One of the best comic book stories ever, quite frankly. And then I've read stories that I thought I was gonna love, like Fables, and it turned out, it was okay. Not great. I haven't finished it yet. I got 60 issues in. You know, maybe I'll go back, maybe I won't. And so many stories like that. All New Wolverine. I didn't care about X-23. I read Tom Taylor's run of All New Wolverine. Some of the best comic books. I absolutely adore the story. And I've continued doing that. Continued. And now I'm starting to dive deeper into characters that they seemed okay to me, but I've never really been interested in reading them. Like Captain America. Everybody's a Captain America fan, but you know, I've never really heard of a comic book run that was just so over the top and just so celebrated. You know, so I decided I'm going to read the Brubaker run, Ed Brubaker's run, The Winter Soldier, and then that led me into Civil War. And so I'm just having such a great time doing so. But what changed my comic collecting was digital comics, one, and my iPad. My iPad is probably one of the most valuable things to my comic hobby, right? Is I have access between DC and Marvel, and then all of these stuff on Comixology. And then again, we're not even talking about the manga, just to everything I could probably ever want to read. And I am enjoying it so much, okay? Just reading the books. And for a while there, Dustin, you know, he was kind of just starting to kind of go down on comic collecting, and he really got into Pokemon, and he was, you know, there was just missing about that excitement, that fire in the hobby. And then I was like, dude, just start reading some stuff and it'll really excite you, right? I mean, pick a character you think you might be interested in, just start reading about it, and then buy a book based on that. And now you see what he's doing with Fantastic Four and The Thing. I mean, I'm not gonna take like full credit for all that, but like that was, we were just like, just try to read, man. You know, we all kind of get burned out, and reading has become such a pivotal moment to my day. Every single day at night, that's, you know, after I'm done with family time and work and editing these videos every single night, I go and I lay down and I read comic books on my iPad or manga on my iPad. And then that's been about the last year and a half, 2 years. And then manga comes into my life. And this is a huge shout out to James Sovic and even Justin Birch here on the channel. Absolutely rocked my world with manga. You know, I did read Berserk a little bit, and that was kind of thanks to these hardcover deluxe editions, or yeah, I guess you can call them hardcover deluxe editions. And I saw Jim talking about Berserk, and I've been familiar with Berserk through the animations and stuff like that, but I finally picked it up, read it, and that was kind of it. That was kind of done. But then James Sovic came in and Justin came in, and they really just got me super excited about manga. And I've always been a huge fan of Dragon Ball Z, but again, that's more of, you know, animation type stuff. And so I decided, well, let's try it out. So I read some more Berserk, and then I started reading, you know, My Hero Academia, another one of the best superhero stories. I mean, and I've continued down that path of just reading manga. Now I'm collecting manga, and, you know, it's a smaller collection, but I'm starting that pretty heavily. And then I started going in and buying, you know, basically hardcovers or collected editions of stories that I've just loved reading, and that's how I'm collecting those stories. I may have read them digitally, but, you know, I read All New Wolverine digitally. I went out and bought the omnibus. As soon as I was done, I said, I need that in my collection. And that's kind of how it's changed, of, you know, buying just random key comic books just to have them for my collection, to really narrowing down my comic book collection and my spending and refocusing and thinking what actually brings me joy in this hobby. Is it just buying, the $50 key that should be $80, but I got the deal, so I'm gonna buy it just to buy it, and buying all the new Comic Book Days books that were just gonna sit, or really focusing on, okay, I'm gonna buy all new Wolverine #1 because I love the story and I want that book. Absolutely need to have it. Or ASM 50 because that is one of my favorite covers of all time. Ever since I started collecting, that was a book I wanted. Or Iron Man 1. The whole reason I got into comic books was because of the Iron Man movie. Those mean something to me, and that's why I decided that's what I'm gonna do. And I tell you guys, if you were struggling with comic book collecting or the hobby as a whole and you don't know which direction to take you, just try to switch it up a little bit. Refocus to new Comic Book Day books. Really think about what books mean something to you and hunt after those, or just start reading some of the books. Dustin's been figuring things out about these Fantastic Four books that he had no clue, or he's heard about and come to find out what people are telling him not exactly right. So I'm telling you guys, there's just so much awesome things in this comic book hobby. And if you kind of need even more, jump into manga. There's so many great stories in manga just to read. Vinland Saga is a great one to jump into. That's absolutely just a Viking story, nothing weird about it. My Hero Academia, Dragon Ball Z, Black Clover, all these really cool stories. And if you don't want to go out and look for the volumes, which can turn into a hunt because of the printer shortage, I've been doing that too. I've been going to several different stores that do sell and even online and hunt down these manga editions, which is pretty interesting to me to do and not something I ever thought I would have done. But and even to these box sets, I mean, there's just so much there. So this is kind of what my hobby, what my comic book hobby has been looking like here lately. And I thought I'd do a video on it. I really don't even know at the point of the video, if I'm being candid with you guys. I kind of just set up the camera and said, let's just talk about what my hobby's turned into. And maybe this will help you guys out some if you're struggling a little bit, or you kind of not having the fire that you were with the hobby. Try some of these other things out, right? Worst case scenario, you get to read some really cool books, or maybe now you have some comic books. And if you're worried about the funds of some of these things, I mean, heck, I took a lot of those books I was telling you guys about and I put them up for sale on eBay, and I ended up paying off a ton of debt, raising my credit score, refinancing my house, and now we're set up financially in a much better spot, all thanks to comic books. And quite frankly, the beginning years of my life, of my comic book hobby life, buying those books that were $30 back then, and now they've shot up to $200-300 just because of this crazy comic collecting inflation. I mean, heck, ASM316, I had a coverless one of those, paid $20 for it, put it on eBay starting a while ago, just because I thought it was a cool cover. During the summer, put it on eBay, coverless 360, or not coverless, but it was split, 361, and it sold for over $100. Just people bidding it up. And I'm like, what is wrong with the market? But it put me in a much better situation financially. So I don't know. There's just so much going on with comic collecting. But I tell you guys, there's nothing I've enjoyed more than to go in and discovering some of these wonderful stories. And then even some of these stories you think are going to be great, and everybody's told you, oh, these are fantastic stories, may not be your taste. Fables, that's one of them. There's a few characters in there, but not really something that I just loved so much. Why the Last Man? I thought that was going to be one of the greatest stories after reading Saga. And I know a lot of people out there are going to say, man, it's so good, you should finish it. But man, I struggled through it. I think I got 33, 34 issues into it, but every night it's become like my rock, that calming period of my life of sitting down, reading through comic books. And I may read 10, 15, 20 issues a night of something if it's great, like the Jason Aaron's Thor run. It took me 2 days, really honestly like a day and a half, to read the Jason Aaron's Thor run. And I did that because I was reading the Donny Cates Thor run, and I was like, well, Jason Aaron's supposed to be great, let me go back and read it. It was not what I was expecting. The first 6 issues were. After that, I really didn't care for much of it left, but that's what the great thing is about comic books and reading them and all the stories and stuff. So guys, let me know what your hobby is. Have you just always been the Silver Age hunter, new Comic Book Day Warrior, the Specker and the Flipper, you know, or are you just one of those guys that just reads and reads and reads? Because I feel like at some point in my comic book hobby, I've, you know, tried to be or have been every single one of those. And it's just amazing how this comic book hobby has taken you down the journey. But guys, let me know what you think. What is it looking like for you? You guys are the best part of Two Brothers Comics. We're so close to 5K, so close to 5,000 subscribers. So tell a couple of friends about us. And if they come over and like what to see, maybe encourage them to subscribe. Guys, you're the best part of Two Brothers Comics. And as always, collect your way.